Story 1. It feels empty, like there's a void in your chest that you can't fill. Yet you'll attempt to fill it anyway, and for a brief moment you may feel complete. However, you always return to feeling empty. Story 2. It varies for each person and their situation, but some common experiences include a lack of motivation, allowing negative thoughts to dominate, feelings of sadness, believing the world would be better without you. Story 3. Tired all the time, lacking motivation, and feeling that nothing matters, struggling to enjoy things that once brought happiness. Story 4. Like knowing which chords to play but not wanting to play them, or stumbling through a cavern with monochromatic eyes and a knot around your heart. Story 5. It differs for everyone. I would describe it as feeling flat, uninterested and half listening when people talk to you, with increased sleepiness. Story 6. For me, it feels like a level of hopelessness. No matter what I do or how hard I work, it never seems to be enough. While I am not feeling suicidal, I find myself constantly thinking about it. Story 7. For me, I swing between absolute numbness, coasting through daily life as if I'm watching a movie unfold and feeling disconnected, and feeling overwhelmed, as if everything is wrong and I want to leave this place behind. I have lost interest in my usual pastimes, engaged in riskier behavior, and experienced feelings of being overwhelmed or wanting to give up. Now, everyone has their ups and downs, but when this persists for years, I begin to label it as depression. Story 8. For me, it presents as baseless foul mood, lethargy, poor sleep, pervasively negative thoughts, lack of appetite, lack of interest in activities I enjoy, rumination, not caring if I were to stop existing. Story 9. It's like when you're a child watching your friends play outside from a window because you're unwell. You want so desperately to be out there having fun, but you just can't. Story 10. You know how you do things? And even enjoy some things you do? Often, we engage in activities we enjoy, so of course you like some of the things you do. Trigger warning. Not anymore. Yes, you should do those things, you should do those things, but that doesn't matter. It feels impossible to even think about doing things, even things you like. Feels too hard, too overwhelming, and, come to think of it, pointless. It's all pointless. You are pointless too and worthless. You've always been pointless, worthless, unloved, and unlovable. You're just finally seeing it now. This can feel like a physical weight crushing you. Your body tightens. It's hard to breathe, and it's hard to move. This is the truth, and now that you've seen this truth, you feel like you will feel this way forever. You will feel this awful hurt and hopeless forever. And then maybe later, hours or even years, unbelievably and impossibly, you might feel better. You feel different for sure. Those thoughts you had, they weren't true. God, they felt true. You feel like such a fool and so much shame for having felt that way. Feeling really depressed is difficult. I'm glossing over a lot, but for me, it's that overwhelm and intense apathy, which I think, if you've never experienced it, is impossible to understand or describe accurately. You have to feel it yourself to truly understand it. Even once it's passed, it's hard to remember just how awful it is. Story 11. For me, there is extreme sadness that curls you into a fetal position and rips your heart out of your chest, making you want to stay in bed. This is not depression. Depression is way below that. It's like becoming aware of a baseline that is survival. To me, the baseline felt like the surface of a swimming pool. Depression is being held under thick, murky water below the surface of survival, where your instincts are not helping you rise. You're just stuck below where there is no oxygen. I have only felt it once in relation to post-traumatic stress disorder, but it lasted for 2 years. I've experienced stress to the end of my rope, sadness, devastation, and more outside of depression. Depression is something else. Story 12. Being a different kind of tired, not physically or mentally fatigued, but emotionally exhausted. You no longer find pleasure in things you used to enjoy. You do the bare minimum because you become overwhelmed quickly. There is a sense of melancholy, feeling weepy or overly emotional, with your feelings being very raw. There might be a desire to isolate or remain in bed. You experience feelings of uselessness, as if you are not part of or contributing to life or society. Story 13. It feels like you can never experience any positive emotions. Someone gives you a gift, but you aren't happy. You may feel angry because you didn't ask for it. Then you feel guilty for being angry or ungrateful, as someone was trying to be kind. Yet you don't feel grateful. You see a beautiful sunset, and all you can think is why others experience it as beautiful while you cannot. You constantly feel upset, and you know others don't share this feeling. That makes you feel misunderstood and even more upset. You sleep for 12 hours, but you don't feel rested. You eat delicious food, but it isn't enjoyable. It may as well be sand. Someone tells a joke. You understand it, but you aren't amused. You find it strange and awkward. You feel unattractive and you struggle to choose the right clothes. Nothing looks good on you, likely because you see yourself as unappealing. Nothing is interesting or exciting. You constantly feel like you want to be doing something else, no matter what you are doing. There's no sense of accomplishment or satisfaction. Time feels like a blur. It doesn't matter what day or year it is because it all feels the same, just bad. Story 14. It is heavy and makes it physically harder to do things. On my heavy days, it is much more difficult to practice my daily yoga and go for hikes with my dog, but I still do it daily and feel better afterward. It also mutes things, colors, feelings, and sounds. Can feel like you are going through the motions of life. I fight against it daily and mostly succeed. Occasionally, I allow myself a day to wallow in it, but I always fulfill my obligations to my pets and family, no matter what. Story 15. A strange feeling of shutting down, like you are slowly drowning in air with no way to get help. There is also a remarkable sense of disdain and pessimism every time something good happens or is about to happen. It feels like, this can't be real. There's no way this is going to go my way. There must be a catch or some sort of price to pay for this miserable life. Where is it? Here we go again. Life never fails to disappoint. Story 16. Doing everything and anything is hard, unmotivating, and can remind you of how bad you feel about yourself. Story 17. It feels like you are wearing a very heavy wet blanket that you cannot remove. No one else can see it, making it difficult to feel understood by others. Story 18. For me, it feels like a sense of hopelessness. Nothing will ever get better, and the past is consuming me. Story 19. Being depressed is a natural response to negative events such as the death of a family member or the loss of a job. Depression is a similar emotion that can occur even when external circumstances are positive, such as when a family member survives cancer, you receive a promotion, and your new album is well received, yet you still feel sad. Story 20. For me lately, it just feels numb. I don't feel much, good or bad. I just feel stuck. Another part of me feels ridiculous because life isn't bad for me personally. I'm just depressed. I don't really know why, but hearing what the world is going through collectively doesn't help. Story 21. I wanted to write a response to this, but then I decided not to because no one cares and there is no real reason to. Story 22. Just a constant feeling that something is wrong. It's unceasing. Every day feels like a bad day. Some are just more tolerable than others. Imagine the feeling you have after a breakup or losing a job. Now, imagine having that feeling 90% of the time for absolutely no reason, with only rare moments of relief. I have to force myself through every day. Fear and anxiety drive me for the most part. I fear what would happen if I let myself drop the ball today. I rarely get the chance to do anything simply because I want to. I'm always running on empty, barely making it. I've had seasons where it has been better. Right now, I'm really struggling with it. It doesn't take much to pull me back to that place mentally, and it can take years to recover. Story 23. What a question. Perhaps I have experienced more than others, or I have lived with it for so long that I don't realize how bad it is. But here goes. It's not numbness or just sadness. It's feeling so intensely that you feel paralyzed. Lying in bed, completely overwhelmed with sadness, shame, guilt, anger, and other emotions until you can't feel anymore. Carrying all those feelings constantly while putting on a mask of happiness and pretending everything is fine. being so paralyzed and criticizing yourself constantly for every failure. I have many things to do, yet I can do nothing but lie here, letting all the shame hit you like baseball bats. You should be doing things, you're lazy, useless, and so on, but you are unable to get up and move. If you have experienced more than one major depressive episode like I have, hearing voices is not unheard of. It's not a voice telling you to do things. Rather, it's those words of shame hitting you when you're trying to focus. They knock you back from productivity into that spiral of shame that drops you deeper into the emotional load you carry. Wanting to talk, be noticed, be missed, and be valued, yet feeling unworthy enough to lay this intense burden on someone else. So you don't reach out, being on autopilot because you know you have to get things done, but you can't do it while carrying the emotional load with you. So your body does it for you. Then, listening to all the superficial positivity memes telling you that you are in control of all your actions all the time, you use that to beat yourself up for making mistakes while on autopilot, otherwise known as dissociating. Going through an intense healing process and sometimes craving to let yourself fall back into the familiar shame spiral that has kept you paralyzed for most of your life. Knowing that once you start to deal with the shame, the depression reacts like a wave to stimuli that affects some people much harder than others. Reminding yourself constantly when you face major issues in your life that it's okay to have a down day and that lying in bed with your emotions is acceptable because you have accomplished significant things. I apologize for the typos, as I am using my phone. I should also mention that I deal with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Story 24. For me, some days I feel numb. On my worst days, I feel completely hopeless, unmotivated, and not wanting to be alive. Story 25. Imagine the worst breakup you have ever experienced. Add in the anxiety and hopelessness as it builds, and picture your heart bleeding and broken. Seems like no one cares about you or how you are feeling. You feel utterly hopeless, and even the thought of not existing offers no comfort. Now, remove any logic or good reason for feeling this way and let it become an uncontrollable thought 24 hours a day. Story 26. When it is good, you feel okay but fatigued. When it is bad, cold water stings, so you avoid bathing for 2 or more days. Some people do not bathe for longer than a week. You feel like you are drowning in water when you are standing inside your house. The future seems impossible, making planning ahead almost unfeasible. You may feel like you do not want to breathe anymore. You want to die but not actually die. You wish you had never existed. This can lead to angry outbursts and suicidal thoughts. When it is chronic, you may experience bad teeth, acne, chronic gastritis, or gastroesophageal reflux disease, nerve problems, insomnia, short-term memory issues, constant bloating, and a cycle of constipation. It may feel like everyone is sick of you, and your performance may fall short of expectations in nearly every aspect of work and life. Prolonged numbness of feelings can result in an indifferent attitude towards jobs and tasks, even urgent ones, ultimately leading to job loss. Story 27. You begin making silent pleas for help and get reprimanded for it. You try to attend therapy, but the therapist doesn't recognize that you're already at the loss of function stage and simply offers medication to ensure you keep returning. You lose your sense of self-worth and stop caring for yourself. Showers become a rare occurrence, even if you are working. You struggle to fall asleep and to stay asleep, but you desperately want to sleep. Activities that once brought you joy, even something as simple as masturbation, lose their appeal. You have difficulty remembering things and struggle to get out of bed, even when you need to use the restroom. Story 28. Nothingness. What struck me was I no longer dreamed. Not sleep dreaming, just daydreaming or planning or imagining my life and the world and the possibilities. Just nothing. I quit drinking, started looking after myself, and I started dreaming again, and now I can't stop. If the source of your dissatisfaction is based on choices you've made, ask yourself hard questions and be honest with yourself. If you say, I wonder if this bad habit or decision is a problem, then it is. Get rid of that negative influence and banish it from your life. Story 29. There was a stray cat that frequently visited my house. One day, he started going under the porch, curling up and staying there. A few days later, he died. Depression is what that cat was experiencing. Story 30. To me, it feels like all the color has drained from the world, and my body feels heavy. I want to get up and do things I know I enjoy, but I just don't have any motivation. The thought of trying makes me even more physically exhausted. I feel like I'm behind on everything: sleep, relationships, career, personal goals, and life. It seems like nothing I do will help me reach a point where I could consider being happy again, yet I cannot quantify why I feel that way. It's exhausting in every way possible. Story 31. Ever have something you really wanted to do, like catch a movie with friends or attend a party, and you flop down on the couch for a quick nap before getting ready? Your alarm let you down and you woke up hours later. The room was dim because the sun was nearly set. You glanced at the time and realized you missed what you had been looking forward to all week. Panic set in, and you felt sad and angry at yourself for being so careless. You were groggy from oversleeping and maybe even felt like you were coming down with a cold. Instead of salvaging what was left of your Friday night, you just decided to go to bed. You took a moment for yourself and made your way to bed without turning on any lights. As you lay down, you replayed your day and what you missed over and over. Eventually, you started scrolling on your phone, and since you slept for so long, you continued doing this until the sun began to rise. When you eventually fell asleep again and woke up, you felt terrible about the fact that it was already 3 p.m. You were hard on yourself for wasting an entire day and wondered what was wrong with you and why nothing ever seemed to work out. Story 32. You know how if you draw on a sheet of paper with a white crayon, the marker doesn't show up? Everything in your life just becomes that void. Go outside, cheer up, etc. Becomes the little beads of marker fluid that just slide off. No matter how hard you draw in that spot with any color, it will change how anything feels. Story 33. Having everything: health, family, friends, a good job, a significant other, and being relatively attractive, while knowing how much better off you are than 99% of the world. Being on a trip or with loved ones, doing something you used to love, and no matter how hard you try or pretend, you cannot feel happy, all while feeling guilty about being unhappy when you have no real reason not to be. Just going through the motions day after day. Story 34. Feeling trapped in a bottomless pit of despair. Nothing tastes good and nothing is enjoyable. You battle your darkest thoughts every waking moment, and death feels like a compelling solution to end your pain. There is nothing logical about depression, and it is not possible to simply snap out of it, despite what some may say. You feel bad even when everything seems fine in your life. You can be surrounded by loved ones, yet the darkness still envelopes you. Story 35. Jim Carrey said it well. Your body has had enough of playing this character and has gone into deep rest. Story 36. Everything requires significant effort. Self-care often demands too much attention and gets neglected. Sleeping excessively or insufficiently, eating too much or too little, and losing interest in activities that once brought joy are common issues. Story 37. It feels like a kind of tiredness that comes from being busy all day, leaving your mind and body utterly drained, and it doesn't improve with rest. It's a constant feeling. You feel numb, as if you are disconnected from the world. Story 38. Every time I pick up a kitchen knife to prepare a meal, I think about suicide. I do not consider myself suicidal. The idea is absurd. I love my family, and they would be hurt by such thoughts. I am simply annoyed by life, which makes no sense, as I have an exceptional family and the means to maintain my moderately wealthy lifestyle. I could spend more if I believed it would make me happy, but maintaining what I own feels burdensome. Sometimes I think that if it's mine, it is broken. I recognized that I suffered from depression at the age of 19. When I was around 65, I had to inform my wife and doctor. I tried medication, which helped alleviate some of the anguish I live with. However, that same anguish drives me. The problem is that as I age, my drive does not make the day easier. I drink to silence the demons that haunt me. Story 39. You can't find any more reason to live, or at least the feeling we have is so overwhelming that any reason to get up another day is never enough. Story 40. It's like being in a long dark tunnel. You look forward, and there is a tiny glimmer of light. You look back, and there is an equally tiny glimmer of light. No matter which direction you decide to go, that glimmer of light never gets any bigger. Some days you just want to curl up in a ball and avoid the world. On those days, that tiny glimmer of light is not even there. Story 41. You know those dreams where you're trying to run but not going anywhere? That's how it feels for me. It's heavy and tiring, and you want to move but can't. Story 42. Like you are slowly wasting away, not caring yet caring too much. Numbness and hopelessness accompany a passion for something that is no longer enjoyable or that you have given up on. There is extreme self-loathing for completing something well that you should be proud of, yet being hard on yourself regardless. You may be reclusive because it is comfortable, but you desire deep connections with friends and family, even though you feel unable to reach out. Story 43. Honestly, there are levels to it, I would say. I feel like I was always a bit down. I was living what most would call a normal life, but still felt sad sometimes. I have let it progress, and right now I literally weep at random times because a thought pops into my head. I don't enjoy the things I used to do anymore, and everything just feels dull. I experience headaches from constant thinking about my issues and feel out of shape because I don't want to do anything anymore. I cry in the middle of work and in the midst of tasks. My ex-wife's mother is in a bad situation. She doesn't do anything at all besides sleep and watch the news while she sleeps. It has levels and everyone is different. Story 44. Weary, sometimes tearful, tired, dull, and feeling despairing, like the tide of not wanting to be here anymore. It feels as if you are always carrying another two versions of yourself in addition to who you are. Story 45. You know that sinking feeling you get when you find out some terrible news or face rejection? Welcome to your new reality. Story 46. A never-ending pit of despair, you get trapped, loathe yourself, and it's a continuous cycle. You immediately question it when you do feel happiness and think you don't deserve it. I feel like I stay alive purely out of spite. I don't want to give people the satisfaction of me ending my life. Story 47. You know that feeling when you first wake up, when the world outside of sleep doesn't quite seem real, and nothing seems important enough to convince you to change what you're doing? That feeling, but all the time and while fully conscious. Story 48. When you just don't want to do typical tasks like washing dishes, eating, or cleaning your home, it can feel overwhelming. Story 49. I heard it differs, but this is my personal experience. I haven't been diagnosed with depression, though I don't know if that counts or if I'm just assuming. Imagine a physical pain in your chest that won't go away, accompanied by surges of negative thoughts. There have been moments when something brightens my mind, but that doesn't last long. Take away all the logic left in your mind and succumb to negative thoughts. Maintain it's worthless mindset, and it feels like depression in a nutshell for me. Honestly, looking back, it felt terrible. I've healed quite a bit, but that hopelessness is still present, just not as often. I might have missed some things. I can be quite forgetful and unclear. As I have seen in the comments, yes, you often just don't want to do anything. For me, I just wanted to lie in bed and let it sort itself out. I also feel like something is amiss, like your heart is empty and feels no emotion, except for sadness and hopelessness. Story 50. It feels like a heavy blanket of apathy and despair is wrapped around me, and I can't remove it no matter how hard I try. Story 51. It is a fog bank that rolls in and out almost completely on its own, which is invisible but noticeable by the hazy sensation of time and emotions that occur when standing within it. Story 52. For me, the most significant part is the lack of motivation. You know the feeling when your alarm rings on a Monday morning and the very idea of getting out of bed for work or school seems like the hardest thing in the world. It's like that, except with everything all of the time. I want to do things, or at least I want to do things, and I usually enjoy them when I do. The struggle is getting to the doing part. It's one of the aspects of executive dysfunction. The sadness used to be overwhelming when I was a teenager, perhaps because I was a teenager, but now in my older age, it's rarely a big deal. There are also plenty of generally minor but still very annoying symptoms, both as signs of depression and side effects of medication. Brain fog, memory issues, sleep problems, mood swings, overeating or undereating, and so on, can also depend on what variation you have. My diagnosis is atypical depression. It is treatment resistant, of course, because I'm not a quitter. Atypical depression is less about low mood I still experience happiness, while some people do not. The cognitive symptoms, however, are particularly troublesome. Unfortunately, I will probably never be cast as the person with their head in their hands in a black and white commercial, but I can sleep for 18 consecutive hours like nobody's business. Story 53. A heavy gray shade envelopes you and everything you enjoy, resembling a chronically overcast day that makes you want to curl up and stay inside without truly enjoying it. Story 54. I felt like I wasn't even here, as if the whole world was in front of me. I felt like I was floating and not truly present. It felt like I was in a hole I couldn't escape from, and I struggled to engage in daily conversations with people or to do the things I once did. It just felt empty. Story 55. This is from my personal experience. Others' experiences may be less traumatic than mine was or far worse. It varies from person to person. Your own mileage may vary. I grew up with low to high-grade depression, and in my late 20s, I really started experiencing wide swings from manic to depressed and back to manic without understanding why it was happening. During my manic periods, I could enjoy brief moments of peace and happiness, or what I perceived happiness to be like. It was not like doing drugs or drinking. This was a more ingrained and permanent aspect of my physiology and neurology. These high times never lasted long before I would start back down the slide. That experience was sometimes so abrupt and significant that I would get butterflies in my stomach, feeling as if I were physically falling into a deep hole that kept getting darker and uglier until I finally bottomed out. I might stay there for weeks or days, again without any indication or rationale behind the changes in my outlook or life experience. Things got very bad for me in my 30s before I entered recovery through a 12-step program in counseling, changed my diet, and found an antidepressant that actually worked for me. At that point, I was not cured of depression. By my late 30s, I was on the path to learning new tools to deal with it and began my recovery from my past. I am in my late 60s now, and I am still on the recovery path and still using the tools. Did you know that your brain cannot really remember pain? You can remember the concept of pain, how it made you react when you first experienced it, but you cannot truly remember the actual pain itself. Severe depression is like that too. When you're deep in that pit at the bottom of life's struggles, you experience life through a thick haze of ugly, bitter, painful interactions. Depression mutes all of life's colors. It robs food of its taste and blocks your ability to smell flowers or a girl's perfume. It takes away the simple joy you might otherwise feel when holding a puppy or a newborn baby. Nothing is fun. Nothing is exciting. Everything is tedious, painful, and horrible to deal with. Light filters into your brain through a tunnel filled with dark, hazy curtains. You cannot make out sharp details in the things around you. You avoid other people and just want to crawl into a corner and hide. On the worst days, you find yourself clinging to life by your fingernails. Depression is incredibly challenging. Story 56. Someone said lethargic, and it's so true. Feels like life is hazed over. It's difficult to be excited. Fun things just don't entertain you anymore, even if you love them. When I was deep in it, I could barely move and had no energy. Coming out of it once in a while feels like coming up for air after being submerged underwater, bringing a moment of clarity and lucidity. Then, sinking back down is panic-inducing as you feel yourself slipping. Before you can right yourself, you're back in the fog. Story 57. It feels like a different person is taking over my body and mind. I know certain things to be true about my self-worth, life, and career, but that feeling is overshadowed by my depressive state. It usually results in a quiet struggle in my mind that causes me to lose focus and motivation, leading me to retreat inward to solve it on my own and return to reality. Can feel quite lonely as well. Story 58. I described it to my spouse like this. It is like being in a well. As time goes on, you slowly slip farther down. The further down you get, the less anything outside matters, and the darker things become. You can see the light from above, but it gets smaller and climbing out gets harder. Story 59. You just don't care about anything anymore. Experiencing pure emotional numbness and losing interest in hobbies and activities you once passionately enjoyed. I love making music, but due to depression, I sometimes find myself unable to touch my piano for weeks. You might compare it to watching a very dull movie with a monotonous plot line. Story 60. It feels like cyclical nihilism. You stop doing things you know will make you feel better because you feel like nothing matters or that it won't change anything, so you don't do it. Then you feel bad about not doing it. You feel bad for not doing something so simple, and you return to the belief that nothing matters anyway. It feels like being stuck in a cycle that also prevents you from exiting. Story 61. In my experience, it feels like life begins to seem purposeless, as does the rest of the world. You start to hide inside your own shell not only because of trauma, but also due to the negative people you encounter. Everything feels triggering, so you decide to stand in one place. Then you become okay and start doing the things you want and some risky activities. After a while, you begin to feel anxious and overthink the way you approach or communicate with others. You start to fear socializing and feel numb, becoming indifferent. You may find yourself dozing off when you're alone or ignoring reality because it feels good. You might think later that you are starting to feel calm, but in reality, you're just repressing your thoughts and trying not to convey your message or express yourself. When asked to articulate your feelings, it all becomes jumbled, and you lose yourself, not knowing what you want or need. You may then feel like just a vessel. Story 62. It feels like you are missing out on something, as if you are bored and have no way to replenish that, and it continues endlessly. Story 63. Not much feels significant. There is no joy, energy, or enthusiasm. Nothing is enjoyable or worth the effort. On better days, nothing matters. Everything feels bland and pointless, draining what little energy remains. On worse days, even breathing is a chore. Story 64. It feels like being extremely weighed down in a dull gray world while life passes by. You know you are hungry and need to eat, but food seems unappealing and difficult due to the effort involved. You feel humiliated that you cannot get out of bed. Story 65. Depression makes me feel like a wind-up toy that isn't fully wound, and I lack the energy to ask someone to wind it for me. I find myself engaged in a task while my mind ruminates on why I am even doing this pointless work, how it won't make a difference, and how I am just a tool fulfilling a purpose for others. I feel like an object rather than a person. Then a pressured feeling arises, pushing me to make the sad thoughts stop. I become angry with myself for feeling weak while also forcing myself to complete the task to ensure I have somewhere to sleep the next day. I think of unhealthy solutions, all of this happening quietly in my mind as I go through my day. I might briefly stare at a tall building or into the sink, contemplating what's inside it. Then I turn my attention to rationalizing why taking action in that moment is clearly a bad idea. Eventually, I endure it. Mentally, it's exhausting to manage my thoughts. I let time pass. My mind goes numb, and I return to completing the task I need to finish. The tension in my shoulders, stress, and slight panic linger in my throat, but at least I am focused on the task at hand. When my supervisor tells me that I didn't do well enough, it feels like the fragile pieces of my composure unravel. I breathe deeply, disappointed in myself. By the end of the night, sleep is very welcome. It feels like healing from a mental cold, as my mind battles against itself. It shifts my mental state to a space where I must balance between giving in to tears and not getting lost in despair. I have to remind myself that it's just brain chemistry, influenced by the decisions I've been making and the negative thoughts I've allowed myself to entertain. I start by telling myself that I can take just a sip of water or eat just a carrot. The crunch of hard foods can be good for alleviating frustration. Additionally, I give my feelings some space, acknowledging that their presence means I am still alive and struggling. It reminds me that I am still here, capable of feeling, and that is a blessing. Story 66. For me, it feels like I am experiencing sadness all day, every day. I cannot remember the last time I felt happy or what that feeling is like. I allow my negative thoughts to dominate my mind, leading to constant self-loathing and a feeling of being a loser. I feel worse than everyone else in the world. I have trouble sleeping, struggle to focus on many things, and I feel a heaviness in my heart and soul. I am always exhausted. Story 67. Constant aches and pains can make you feel reluctant to go anywhere or even do basic chores like washing your hair, brushing your teeth, or eating healthy. You may feel empty and cry often, among other things. Story 68. Physically, I feel tired and weighed down. I don't look forward to anything and don't even care if something good happens. I just think, oh, cool. If something bad happens, I think, oh, that sucks. I feel numb and am just going through the motions. Story 69. Sadness and crying may occur. There may be a lack of motivation to do anything. You might isolate yourself. You could get too much sleep and still feel tired. There may be a reluctance to talk to anyone. You might abandon hygiene or neglect self-care. Suicidal thoughts can also happen. It could be all of these feelings or even just a part of them. Story 70. Ali Brosh has a great series on what depression is like, offering valuable insights and humor. It is often cited as an excellent representation of the experience. Story 71. It is a state of deep hopelessness. Whether that hopelessness is a true reflection or not is irrelevant. Depression is subjective. Story 72. Like you have an itch in your soul you just can't scratch. Oh wait, that's anxiety. Like there's a hole in your soul you just can't fill. There we go. Story 73. Exhaustion and a desire to sleep away life. Thoughts of your friends and family being better off if you were gone. Feeling as though you do not deserve a good life. Story 74. I stopped having interest in things I have loved my entire life. I shut out family and friends and isolated myself. I listened to the negative thoughts in my mind and believed them, thinking the world is better off without me. Story 75. Oh, to think there are people who have never experienced it. To me, it feels like the last day of your cycle right before your period when premenstrual syndrome is at its worst. You're tired, hungry, and sad for no reason. You feel lonely and don't want to do anything but lie in bed. Now make it 5 times worse and add thoughts about your own uselessness and the lack of meaning in life, and you've described my depression pretty perfectly. Story 76. Imagine the one activity you hate more than anything. Now imagine that this activity is a huge block of stone lying on you, preventing you from doing anything. Story 77. You try hard to focus, but nothing changes. Your mind and body are blocked so you don't concentrate, leading to negative thoughts. Your body remains blocked. Story 78. If I had to describe it as a color, red would represent anger, green would signify jealousy or envy, blue would symbolize sadness, and depression would be depicted as gray, just everything gray. Story 79. It feels like nothing, but it is so heavy, like an invisible blanket covering you. You feel trapped, wanting to move but unable to. Story 80. Empty like nothing else. Feeling utterly lost within yourself, with no clue or motivation on how to find your way out. Story 81. Being wrapped in a heavy felt cloak of profound sadness, fear, and futility. I am just guessing with no experience here at all. Honest. Oh yes, and denial. Story 82. You wake up exhausted. You don't have the energy to get anything done. Even if you wanted to, there is so much to do that you already feel overwhelmed by everything. Every bone in your body tells you to abdicate responsibility, but you get up, drink an energy drink, and fake a smile while you take the kids to school. You work for 8 hours just for the distraction from the rest of your life, then come home and try not to think about all the problems that will definitely overtake you if you gave up as you feel you need to. You get diagnosed, take the medication, and you don't feel happier. You just feel numb. The big overwhelming stuff doesn't matter. It's still there and still scary. You just care less. The same goes for your relationships, your friend groups, and your entire life. Depression is scary. Story 83. Knowing that all it takes is to think differently about yourself while being unable to consistently do so is frustrating. Story 84. Nothing matters. There is no way out. Living without companionship intensifies feelings of loneliness, causing you to retreat and hide in bed. Where is the off switch? Story 85. For me, it always felt like I was empty inside, like a large pit of nothingness centered in my stomach. My thoughts were consistently negative, leading me to believe that everyone around me would be better off without me in their lives. I was in 7th grade when I experienced my first bout of depression. I am grateful my parents recognized the signs and got me the help I needed. I am unsure if I would be here otherwise. Story 86. Nothing feels overwhelmingly heavy and awful. It exists both inside you and outside of you. It is everywhere and nothing seems good. Even the good things, like your dog who loves you, feel worse because they are stuck with you and have no choice. You might wonder, what kind of person subjects an innocent animal to this life? This leads to self-hatred, making the depression feel deserving, which diminishes any motivation to escape it. Truly is a challenging situation. Thank goodness for medication. Story 87. It doesn't feel right. That's the problem. There is a disconnect, making it hard to feel motivated to get up and do anything. Everything feels like moving through molasses. Story 88. I feel like if I were on a crowded sidewalk and collapsed to the ground, nobody would check on me to see if I am okay. I don't matter. I am not worthy of assistance. Story 89. It feels like nothing. There is no energy, no desire, and no emotions, other than dark ones. You may feel alone even if you have friends. You might be sleeping too much, too often, or not enough. You may not feel like eating, or you might binge on unhealthy food. You barely feel like getting out of bed. You couldn't smile even if someone paid you. You may dislike yourself and feel anger towards yourself for feeling this way. That's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of symptoms, but everyone experiences depression sometimes. It's when it doesn't go away for weeks and months that it becomes a concern. Consider seeing someone, even just once, for an outside opinion. It may feel impossible to be optimistic, but from someone who has gone through it, I know you can get through this, so take all the help you can find. Story 90. For me, it feels like there's an emptiness and sadness that cannot be resolved by the things I used to enjoy. It's like being away from home as a child and feeling homesick, but constantly, even after 28 years. I experience a sense of being lost and hopeless while having to carry on and pretend that I'm not. Then there's the frustration and anger, as they seem to be the only emotions that still function. Story 91. Like I am walking through life with a parachute attached to me, constantly dragging me down, everywhere I go. Story 92. Imagine you're hungry, but nothing in the fridge seems appetizing. You're tired, but don't want to sleep. Or maybe you want to own something but refuse to buy it. Depression is when you feel everything and nothing at the same time. You live because you haven't died yet, not because you enjoy life. Everything you enjoyed seems pointless, any achievement seems meaningless, and any responsibility you have you keep attending to because if you don't, your life would get worse, not because of a sense of duty. You care just enough to not let yourself die, yet not enough to fix your life. The worst part? You're aware of it. Unlike people who are delusional or have mental illnesses, you know exactly what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how much it's wrecking your life, yet you refuse to take action to fix it. Little by little, this awareness creates guilt, self-hate, anxiety, sadness, dread, and the feeling that you're meaningless. You spiral out of control until eventually you become paralyzed, unable to do anything unless you absolutely have to, which has immediate consequences on your life. Everything seems pointless. Joy is an exception rather than the norm, and you won't even appreciate it because you don't believe you deserve it. You live on autopilot, just waiting to die. What's terrible is that when you're depressed, you don't want to be a burden. Around people, you seem normal, cheerful, even overjoyed. Everyone thinks you're the bubbliest person in the room, but inside, you're just panicking, hoping you don't break in front of them and wishing your act is convincing enough. It's a terrible life. Story 93. I'll let Rodney describe it. Story 94. At first, it feels suffocating, but over time, you become comfortable with it and immerse yourself in more sorrow. Remember, it only takes one thought to break this cycle. Story 95. Feeling like a gray cloud is following you around. Coming home and just wanting to cry. Having things to do but not wanting to get up and leave the house. So you do, but you are on autopilot with no smile on your face. It gets really hard to smile. There is a feeling of heaviness but at the same time emptiness. Like nothing really matters. You feel helpless and wonder when this pain will end. There is also a feeling of being alone, as if no one is really there for you, carrying all of this by yourself. Then there is the desire to sleep to escape your problems but having difficulty falling asleep. Story 96. Having no interest in anything, feeling fatigued all the time, feeling lonely even when people are around, and feeling lost. Story 97. It is clear from my facial expressions that I am tired of everything. I also tend to move very slowly like a sloth. Story 98. You know all those things that you enjoy and do to relieve stress? Imagine none of them are fun anymore and you don't know why. You're more tired than you should be. You ache more, body pains feel worse, and they cause more anxiety. Existential crises are just under the surface, waiting to spiral into fear and dread. Story 99. You know that song, Because I Got Depressed by Afroman? Similar to that, but without all the fun musical vibes. Story 100. Imagine not being a morning person and having to wake up at 4 a.m. You feel slow, sluggish, and tired. Now imagine feeling this for years, trapped in a system that benefits many people, but not you. You experience fatigue in a way that is hard to express, with no end in sight. You must keep working because you are only a week of income away from bankruptcy. This is your life now. Eventually, you may wish for an accident or heart failure because this suffering is no longer worth the monotonous and exhausting existence. Source: I went through a burnout. Story 101. A deep, dark pit with no will or desire to reach up for help. It is so deep that you can't see the number of people who are around to assist. Story 102. Being locked in a prison cell with the key to unlock the door hanging on the wall, but you cannot get up to fetch it because gravity has you stuck to the floor. Story 103. Nothing will happen, and you may feel terrible. You might be too downtrodden to do anything, or you could feel extremely angry. There is nothing that can fix it, and there is nothing you can do. Sometimes it is just like that. Story 104. Everything is foggy and gray. You don't want to do anything and can't figure out why, all while feeling bad for not doing anything. You feel worthless while wanting to be something yet can't. Anyway, it's great to come out of it. Story 105. Close your eyes and remember what it was like sitting through your least favorite class in high school. Everything smells unpleasant, feels uncomfortable, and sounds irritating, and you cannot force yourself to pay attention to or enjoy the lecture, no matter what you try. You barely even feel awake. You're just trying to get through it, hoping that the class ends and this feeling subsides. Now imagine you have that feeling, but about everything, everywhere, all the time, even things you used to love, even thoughts about living or dying. Nothing energizes or interests you or brings you any joy. Story 106. You don't want to do anything. You wait for the energy to take action, but it rarely arrives. You often question the purpose of your actions. In your mind, you feel as if you are already defeated, and nothing seems to matter. You attempt to find happiness, but there always seems to be a barrier to overcome. A persistent sadness and a sense of defeat linger. Story 107. It feels like I'm swimming in place. I keep trying to move forward, but when I stop to look, I haven't moved at all. It feels like being trapped in a situation that, deep down, I am not happy with but cannot change. It feels like seeing a goal, wanting it so much that I physically long for it, but I cannot figure out how to make my limbs move to reach it. It feels like watching myself age and decay slowly, knowing I can fix it, but again, I cannot move no matter how hard I try. Feels hopeless. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.